Detective Jamison hated portals, and he sat ruminating at his desk over the news that the largest one ever was set to open. The first ever intergalactic level view step was officially set to launch in the next few weeks, but in his humble opinion, Jamison felt like all this rapidly expanding portal technology was responsible for this ridiculous stack of files he had in front of him. While grimacing at the papers, his captain walked in and dropped a file on top of them.
"This one is a doozy,"
he said,
"but I think you're the man for the job. There have been a series of attacks on view step stations around the globe, and we need to get to the bottom of it."
Jamison picked up the file and flipped through it. His interest peaked. The bombings did indeed seem coordinated, but there were no leads. He was intrigued by the challenge, and he knew that this was the kind of case that could make a real difference. Jamison left the office to go investigate the crime scene. They discovered this all involved the Cosmafia, a small group of rogue pilots and smugglers who banded together in the early days of interplanetary travel. As technology advanced and more planets were colonized, the mob saw an opportunity to control the flow of illegal goods and services throughout the galaxy. They got deeply intertwined within the networks of portal travel. For 40 years, they gave the illusion of strength to keep a hold on the business, but as of late, they seemed to have faded to obscurity. Before he left the scene, Jamison found a trinket on the ground that belonged to his ex-wife, Alexa. He couldn't believe it. No way it was a coincidence. He couldn't understand why she would be involved with such a dangerous group. He knew immediately who could give him answers. The detective walked through the dark and narrow alleys of the city, his eyes scanning the surroundings for any sign of his informant. As he approached the designated meeting spot, he saw a figure leaning against a wall, smoking a cigarette. He recognized the small-time crook who had agreed to give him information in exchange for galactic credits. Jamison approached him cautiously, his hand resting on his gun. "You got something for me?" he asked. The informant took a drag of his cigarette, blowing out a plume of smoke.
"Maybe,"
he said, a sly grin on his face.
"but it's gonna cost you."
Jamison kept his poker face, but he knew he had to pay to play. He pulled out a wad of cash and handed it to the informant. "Talk," he said. The informant pocketed the money and took another drag of his cigarette.
"I ain't got much, but I heard some rumors about your ex-wife. Apparently, she's mixed up with some heavy hitters in the Cosmafia."
Jamison's heart skipped a beat. He had suspected as much, but to hear it confirmed was a different matter entirely. "Who were the heavy hitters?" he asked. The informant shrugged.
"Don't know their names, but I heard they're ruthless and they got some serious muscle behind them. They're into all sorts of illegality, but I heard they're particularly interested in the view step stations. They're planning something big, and your ex-wife is involved somehow."
Jamison's mind raced as he tried to piece together what he had just been told. The Cosmafia had a reputation for radicalization and violence, but they for some reason just disappeared, and now they were working with his ex-wife. He knew he had to find out more, but he knew the informant had nothing else to give him. He thanked him and walked away. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something important. He searched deeper, but he couldn't find any concrete evidence that would explain Alexa's involvement. He was starting to feel like he was going in circles, and he was beginning to lose hope. He knew he couldn't give up, not yet, not when so many lives were at stake. He had to keep pushing, keep digging, until he got to the bottom of this. Detective Jamison headed to his favorite cafe near the center of the galaxy, nursing a cup of coffee and staring blankly at the passing crowds. He had been tracking down leads on the Cosmafia for weeks now, but was no closer to finding any concrete evidence that would explain his ex-wife's involvement. Just as he was about to give up, he noticed two strangers talking to themselves. The two were an odd match. The man's clothing style was rugged, a giraffe leather vest with a pair of matching boots. He also had a large dagger around his neck, a for sure sign that he was from Volta, and next to the woman's modern Zorathian sparkle wear, he looked primitive. But by the look of it, they were just having a good conversation. Jamison imagined, with the chat they were having, they must have known each other for years. Jamison watched as the two strangers parted ways, and he realized that the expansion of the galaxy had brought them together. They were from different planets, but they had found a way to connect and make a life for themselves in this new and unfamiliar world. The detective couldn't help but feel a sense of hope and inspiration wash over him. He realized that even though the Cosmafia was causing major trouble, there were also good people out there who were making the most out of this new and exciting time in history. Then Jamison felt the slightest twinge of nostalgia as he remembered the old days where he and Alexa were still together after another bombing happened. Jamison received a cryptic message from an unknown source telling him to come to the edge of the solar system. He followed the instructions and located some ancient ruins. They were dark-looming monolithic structures that had been forgotten by most of the United Galaxy, and there he found Alexa. After almost 30 years, she was as beautiful as he last remembered, but there was dullness in her eyes. When she spoke, there was a hoarseness to her voice.
I can see the surprise all over your face. Let me explain exactly how we all got here. With my extensive backlog of historic knowledge, I got contacted by the Cosmafia. They wanted to expand their control over portal travel and knew the secrets hidden here would be useful.
Jamison confronted her, pulled her close, and asked, how could you work with such despicable people? And she said,
I thought I could work amicably with the Cosmafia to find ancient artifacts and technologies that could be used to further both our goals. I never intended for the bombings to happen. They thought they could control the smoke, but the forces at work here were too strong for any of us to...
Suddenly, a black vapor monster emerged from her eyes. Jamison looked in awe at the terrifying creature, and it spoke out to him.
Jamison, you have been chosen for a noble purpose. I manipulated space and time to bring you here, the place where the secrets of the past are kept. You see, I am not just any creature. I am Veu, the protector of the hidden and unknown, of which are the portals you humans have been using. Something that you should not have any access to. So I have chosen you to help me in my quest for balance. I am offering you the chance to step back through time to a moment when your father was still working on his invention. I want you to change that moment in history and eliminate all of this discord. The choice is yours, but if you choose to embark, you will only be able to return when something has changed in a major way.
Jamison was hesitant, but he knew he had to do something to stop the bombings. He stepped through the black vapor cloud and found himself in the past, rewatching a memory of his younger self interact with his father. He remembered his father was too busy to play ball with him that day. Jamison remembered how frustrated he felt, but from this new perspective, he saw that his father wasn't ignoring him just to work on portal technology. He was motivated to help the entire civilization get back things that they lost hold of. Jamison listened to the man plead to his father.
I know how much it hurts you to miss out on time with your son, so I truly appreciate you making that sacrifice when we are so close to unlocking the formula. Once this thing is operational, me, alongside many more, will be indebted to you. When we are able to connect instantaneously with our friends and family, this will be a far better world.
Jamison watched as the two men worked and took a moment to close his eyes to think, but when he opened his eyes, he was back at his desk with papers still piled up, but this time he smiled at it and he decided to make an important call.